Fake HOA harassed black teen. His dad was the local chief justice. Part 1. It was just past 5 p.m. on a golden summer afternoon in the quiet suburb of Ridgefield Heights, the kind of neighborhood where people prided themselves on pristine lawns and matching mailboxes. To the outside world, it looked like the picture of perfection. But underneath that surface simmered a tension that no one wanted to admit. Karen Whitmore had self-appointed herself as the president of what she called the Ridgefield Homeowners Integrity Committee. In reality, there was no official HOA, but that didn't stop her from printing fake notices, patrolling the streets like a sheriff, and enforcing made-up rules that conveniently targeted anyone who didn't fit her mold of acceptable. And today, her attention zeroed in on 17-year-old Malik Carter. Malik was walking home after basketball practice, earbuds in, a water bottle tucked under one arm, and his gym bag slung over his shoulder. He'd just made the varsity team and was feeling proud, until a white SUV screeched to a halt next to him. Karen jumped out, face flushed with indignation. "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" Malik pulled out his earbuds. "I live here, ma'am, on Brookstone Lane." Karen narrowed her eyes. "That's impossible. There are rules in this neighborhood. You can't just loiter around. Do your parents even own a home here?" He blinked. "Yes, ma'am. We've lived here for years." But Karen wasn't interested in facts. She snapped a photo of him, muttering something about reporting suspicious activity. Then in front of several neighbors, she shouted, "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the cops." A woman nearby gasped. A man across the street started recording on his phone. Malik's voice trembled, but he stood his ground. "Go ahead," he said. "Call them. And while you're at it, let them know my dad is Chief Justice David Carter." Karen's face froze. She laughed awkwardly. "You're joking." Malik pulled out his ID. His last name was right there, Carter. And anyone who lived in Ridgefield Heights should have known that Judge Carter, the first black chief justice in the state, had bought the beautiful colonial home at the end of the cul-de-sac 6 years ago. Karen suddenly looked pale, but it was too late. By the time the police showed up, neighbors had already posted the video of Karen yelling at Malik on Nextdoor, Facebook, and Twitter. It went viral within hours. The caption read, "Fake HOA harasses black teen. Turns out his dad is the state's chief justice." The backlash was immediate and brutal. People recognized Karen. She wasn't just some woman. She was the same person who'd once scolded a Hispanic landscaper for not having permits and who reported a black delivery driver for acting suspicious. But this time, she'd gone after the wrong family. The next morning, Judge Carter himself held a press conference, not to talk about his title, but to talk about his son. Malik is 17. He's an athlete, a volunteer at the community center, a kid who just wanted to walk home. But yesterday, he was treated like a criminal. And the saddest part? This isn't new. It's just the first time someone with power is watching. His voice cracked slightly. "If it can happen to my son, it can happen to anyone." That clip aired on every major network. By the end of the week, national news outlets had picked up the story. Hashtags like Honeyarash, Justice for Malik, and now Fake HOA Exposed trended for days. People from around the country sent support to the Carter family. Others began to share their own stories about fake HOAs being used to discriminate and intimidate. Meanwhile, Karen's world imploded. She was forced to resign from the local garden club. Parents pulled out of the community play date she organized. Her own son's school emailed her about concerns regarding her conduct. Her job at a local real estate agency suspended her pending review. For days, she stayed inside, blinds drawn, afraid to open the door. Then one evening, she saw a note taped to her mailbox. It was handwritten, no signature. It said, "You should be grateful Judge Carter has more dignity than you. You owe that boy an apology." That night, something in Karen cracked, not from guilt, but from the shame of being publicly humiliated. But as she scrolled through comments online, one video hit her hard. It was Malik, standing beside his father during a school event. He was talking about forgiveness. "I don't want her punished. I want her to learn. I want her to see I'm not her enemy." That shook her. The next morning, for the first time in a week, Karen left her house and walked down to the Carters' front door. Malik answered. She stood silently for a moment. I came to say I was wrong." He nodded slowly. I saw what I expected to see, and I didn't listen. I let my fear and my assumptions turn me into a bully. Malik looked her in the eyes. You didn't just hurt me, you embarrassed yourself. Karen swallowed hard. I know, and I deserve that. But if you're willing, I'd like to talk more. Learn. I want to change. Behind him, Judge Carter stepped into view. He said nothing, just nodded once, acknowledging the moment. Not accepting, not condoning, but recognizing the weight of her step. In the months that followed, something remarkable happened. Karen started attending community equity workshops. She helped organize a real inclusive neighborhood watch, this time with actual bylaws and diverse representation. And at a town hall meeting, she stood on stage and addressed the crowd herself. I used to believe I was just protecting our community, but what I really did was weaponize my power. I'm deeply sorry for what I did to Malik Carter. He showed me a grace I didn't deserve, and I'm committed to becoming better. Applause followed, not because she was forgiven, but because people saw the rarest thing, someone actually learning. Malik, now a senior, later said in an interview, sometimes people don't change until the mirror is held up in front of them. We didn't just hold a mirror, we turned on the spotlight. And in that light, something good began to grow. Part 2. By the beginning of fall, Ridgefield Heights wasn't the same. The Carter family had never intended to become symbols. But after the incident, Malik's name had become a rallying cry, not just for justice, but for awareness. Local schools invited him to speak. Churches asked him to join youth panels. Even state leaders began reaching out to his father for guidance on how to build safer, fairer neighborhoods. Malik, still just 17, handled it all with remarkable grace. He always made it about the bigger picture. I'm just one kid, he said during a podcast interview, but if what happened to me made someone think twice before judging another person, then it was worth it. Meanwhile, Karen's transformation wasn't performative. It was real, though not easy. She began meeting privately with families of color in the neighborhood, listening, really listening, to their stories. Stories that echoed Malik's, some even worse. Stories she'd never bothered to learn because she never believed they existed in her neighborhood. One night she sat across from a black veteran named Terrence, who'd lived quietly on the next street for over a decade. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said, "You were always the first to report my garden hose, but never once asked if I was okay after my wife passed." Karen blinked, her mouth suddenly dry. "I didn't know," he replied calmly but firmly. "You never tried to." That moment stayed with her. Over time, Karen went from attending community meetings to co-leading them. She pushed for the official disbanding of the fake integrity committee and helped pass a neighborhood code of conduct that strictly prohibited profiling or harassment. She even helped organize Ridgefield's first Unity in the Park event, an outdoor festival celebrating the cultures, histories, and contributions of every resident in the neighborhood. But perhaps the most unexpected shift came when she approached Malik with a new idea. Part 3. It was late October, and the leaves had turned a brilliant mix of amber and crimson. Malik had just wrapped up a volunteer session at the local rec center, helping tutor younger kids in math, when Karen stopped by with a folder in hand. "I've been thinking," she began nervously, "about how this whole thing started, with me pretending to be something I wasn't, a leader. So I figured, maybe we help real leaders rise." Malik raised a brow. "What do you mean?" She opened the folder. Inside were sketches and plans for a youth initiative called Project Voice, a mentorship and empowerment program for teens, especially Black and brown youth, to get involved in local government, legal literacy, and leadership. "I don't want my name on it," Karen added quickly. "I just want to support it. You lead it if you want. It should be yours." Malik stared at the papers for a long time. He didn't smile right away, but there was something in his eyes. Recognition. "I'll think about it," he said. "But you'll have to be there too." Karen blinked. "Me?" "You caused the storm," he said softly. "Now you help rebuild the bridge." Part 4. By the following spring, Project Voice launched with 30 teens and a small group of adult mentors. Karen sat in the back during the first session, quietly observing as Malik stood at the front and introduced the program. "We all want to be seen," he said, "heard, understood. But too often people see the surface and miss the soul. This is our space to flip the narrative. The room erupted in applause. And sitting in the back, Karen wiped away a tear. For the first time in her life, she didn't need to be in control. She just needed to show up. 6 months later, a local journalist published a long-form feature titled, "The Teen Who Changed the Neighborhood and the Woman Who Helped Him Do It." The article went viral, not because it was sensational, but because it was real. It told the story of a boy who stood his ground, a judge who led with wisdom, and a woman who, though once blinded by prejudice, chose to change. And in the final paragraph, Malik was quoted, "Redemption doesn't erase the past, but it builds something better in its place." From scandal to legacy, it had been almost a year since the incident. Ridgefield Heights no longer looked the same, not because the houses had changed, but because the people had. The neighborhood that once whispered behind curtains and avoided uncomfortable truths had become a place of open conversations, listening circles, and hard but healing discussions. At the heart of this shift stood Project Voice, now a growing program that had expanded beyond Ridgefield and was being piloted in 4 other districts across the county. Malik, once just a high school junior, was now known as the quiet leader with a powerful message. Newspapers called him the bridge builder. But behind the scenes, he remained humble. He still mowed the lawn for Mrs. Dorsey next door, still walked the same route home, earbuds in. Only now more people smiled, waved, and made time to speak. And at every event, every meeting, Karen Whitmore was there. She no longer spoke first. She no longer led from the front. She had learned that the best kind of leadership wasn't about control, it was about service. But not everyone had forgiven her. At one school town hall, a mother stood up and asked sharply, "Why is she still allowed to be here after what she did?" The room went silent. Karen stood up slowly. "I understand your anger," she said, voice steady, "and I'll never ask anyone to forget what happened. But I'm not here to be liked. I'm here because I have to be. Because I caused harm, and I want to repair it, not just to Malik, but to everyone I ever made feel unwelcome in their own home." There was no applause, just silence. But Malik, sitting in the front row, nodded once. And that small gesture broke the tension. Soon after, a documentary team working on racial equity in American suburbs reached out to Judge Carter. They wanted to feature Ridgefield Heights. The story had become a national example of grassroots transformation, from ignorance to inclusion. When the crew arrived, Karen hesitated to be interviewed. But Malik encouraged her. "Tell the truth," he said, "all of it." And so, in a quiet interview under the shade of a willow tree, Karen opened up for the first time on camera. "I used to think I was protecting this neighborhood," she admitted, "but really I was protecting my fear. Fear of change, fear of difference. And that fear turned me into someone I didn't recognize, until a teenage boy stood calmly while I screamed at him for simply existing." She paused. "And the worst part? I almost didn't regret it, until the whole world was watching." The interviewer leaned forward. "What changed?" Karen glanced at the playground behind them, where Malik was teaching a group of 3rd graders how to run a mock trial. "He did," she said. "He looked me in the eyes and didn't return my hate. He didn't try to humiliate me like I did him. He just stood tall, like someone raised by a man who knows what justice really means." The segment aired nationally, and for the first time, the world didn't just see a viral scandal. They saw what happened after. 1 year later, the ceremony. Exactly 1 year from the day of the incident, the community held a commemorative event called Day of Reflection. Hundreds gathered in the community park. Family, students, officials, and press. Local choirs sang. Food trucks lined the street. But at the heart of the event was a simple stage with 2 speakers scheduled, Malik Carter and Karen Whitmore. Malik spoke first. He didn't talk about the past. He talked about what had come after. The meetings, the mentorships, the small moments that mattered. He ended with this: "You can't fix the world overnight, but you can fix the way you see it. And when enough people do that together, that's how change begins." Then Karen took the stage. She stood quietly for a moment, scanning the crowd. Some people still looked skeptical. Some averted their eyes, but some nodded, softly, cautiously, but with openness. She cleared her throat. "I used to be afraid of being wrong. That fear made me defensive. But being wrong wasn't the problem. It was refusing to grow from it. Her eyes found Malik in the crowd. This young man gave me a second chance. Not because I earned it, but because he believed that even the worst people can learn if they're willing to listen. So today I thank him. And I also want to thank every neighbor who called me out, who didn't let me hide behind excuses. You all saved me from becoming a smaller version of myself. A pause. And if you'll let me keep showing up, I'll keep learning. For the first time, the audience applauded her. Not a standing ovation, not roaring cheers, but a long, slow ripple of claps, genuine, thoughtful, and earned. Months later, Project Voice received a federal grant to expand statewide. Malik, now preparing to attend Howard University, handed over local leadership to a team of young students he had mentored. But before he left Ridgefield Heights, he organized one final event, a dedication ceremony for a new community center wing. Its name, the Whitmore Room, for listening, learning, and leading. When Karen saw the plaque, her hands trembled. "I can't accept this," she whispered. But Malik simply smiled. "You already have. The world didn't stop being unfair. Racism didn't vanish. But in one small corner of America, people remembered that even the most painful beginnings could lead to a powerful ending, if we're brave enough to face the truth and kind enough to rebuild." And so, in a neighborhood once torn by ignorance and judgment, a teenage boy and a woman who once hated what she didn't understand built something greater than either of them ever expected, a legacy of light. The Anduri